Okay. Well, I am here today with a gentleman I have known for many years, a wonderful friend of mine, Richard Hill. If you're not familiar with Richard, you should be, because he's done a lot of really incredible things. Presently, he is the managing editor for the Science of Psychotherapy magazine and involved with the podcast of the same name. He's been the past president of the Global Association of Interpersonal Neurobiological Studies. So he sit on the editorial board of the International Journal of Psychosocial Genomics. As the founder of the Mind Science Institute in Sydney, Australia. And he's not a bad guitar player. Richard, hi.
What a wonderful resume. Thanks. No, it's lovely to be with you, Paul, and it's my great pleasure to contribute to all this work you're doing. As you know how supportive I am of the framework that you're presenting. So what can I do to contribute to this wonderful piece of work you're doing here?
Well, I would love to talk to you a little bit about, and I think people would like to know, since we've been talking about certain actions, activities, concepts on how we can create these kind of magical experiences, transformative experiences in therapy. If just kind of from your perspective as a psychotherapist, as a business consultant, and a neurobiologist, for you, what are some important things that you look for to kind of co-create, because we talk a lot about co-creation with the client, to co-create those experiences in your own work?
Yeah, I mean, this idea of co-creation is one that surprisingly is surprising, because it's all we've ever been about. I mean, human beings are an interpersonal species. Certainly interpersonal neurobiology. We've got people like Dan Siegel talking about this. Lou Cozolino has also been talking a lot about the importance of the engagement, the social synapse between us, what we create in the space. Wonderful people like Bonnie Badnock, talk about holding the space and the value of this engagement in between. So there's a lot of history and engagement that have come up. And then, of course, my work with Ernest Rossi, which is as good as working with Milton Erickson. There was he was one of the closest to him. And this idea then percolating in my head of what is it that we create when we co-create? Now we're saying a bit of a guitar player. Well, I was actually an actor for 25 years and excellent training for psychotherapy, I believe. But this is all that you did, was co-create. It was entirely this inter-responsive framework. And when one talks about a wooden actor, someone who is saying their lines without a great deal of depth or relevance, then that's because they're not co-creating. What they're doing is they're waiting until the other person says their lines, and then they say their lines, right. And then it goes along. And it's wooden. And this, to some extent, is the problematical experience and framework that occurs when we're overzealous as a therapist with our method.
Yes.
That you say, and now, with CBT, you might say, okay, now we're going to talk about your current beliefs. And then the client goes off and says, well, actually, tomorrow, what I'm concerned about what's going to, and they start talking about something else in the process. Now, what that screams out is for the therapist to kind of drop that sort of pragmatic particular aspect of the work they're doing, and go, okay, well, let's just talk about that for a while. Let's sit with that, or let's run with that, depending. Sometimes someone wants to sit, sometimes they want to run. And it's this, what Ernie and I call client responsive work, that is so much like acting and so much like conversation, that it becomes quite easy to slide into, because I think it's more natural. So really, I guess my answer is saying what we're talking about is escaping the pragmatic frameworks we've created, and returning to what is actually a natural experience. And how is it that we've forgotten this naturalness of co-creating experiences together?
Hmm. Yeah, you bring up some really good points, particularly when you're talking about the wooden actor. And do you find when you're consulting and you're teaching and talking to other therapists that that wooden aspect is more due to they don't quite trust themselves to kind of go in the moment, or do you feel that sometimes they've just been taught not to go in the moment?
Yeah, yeah. So being in the moment is tricky. Both of you being in the same moment at the same time is another trick again. I would suggest that the early engagement, that first meeting, that early conversation, or sometimes people take a little while to develop what we call rapport, or that that mutual engagement between client and therapist, that relationship. That's all when it's fairly wooden, because we're kind of not quite sure whether we're saying the right things or whether they're not. So we're seeing what the reaction. So what we need to do initially is build a catalog, build a dictionary of naturalness between the two people, and this getting to know the other person is what we call it in daily life. In psychotherapy, we call it building rapport or creating a client therapist relationship. It's what we just normally call getting to know someone.
Hmm.
And it's not uncommon. And I'm sure people can think back to their romantic relationships over the years, where the first meeting may not have been actually that good. And in fact, there are a few first meetings I can think of where I thought, oh God, well, I'm never going to, they're horrible. Ugh. And you realize how much you've mistaken what's going on. So this is also a very important part of being responsive, is allowing for the fact that you may be completely mistaken. And one of the things I think when you talk about the magical session is that you keep flowing with the flow. With the nature of the experience. And Csikszentmihalyi clarified it to us, where he said there is a relationship between your expertise, your skills, and the difficulty or the challenge that is meeting you. There's a wonderful spot where the nature of the skills you have and the nature of the challenge have a meeting place, and we call that flow.
Hmm.
We then have a situation where the skills are a little bit below, the challenge is a bit greater, and that leads to challenge, a bit more. Then we move down where the skill is high and the challenge is low, and you get control. So what we don't understand is the nature of those elements. The desire is to get into flow, where there's just this dynamic interplay of give and take and movement across. That's when it gets to magic, you know. And it's constantly being aware of whether you need to increase the challenge or whether you're getting a bit overconfident with the skills. But finding that flow pattern is, to me, kind of a way in which the Csikszentmihalyi model and the way you describe magical session sort of intertwine. And I'm a great believer that all theories should eventually find a commonality, or otherwise they're just bonkers things that we've made up and they're stupid.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. We talked a little bit in the course about um, some of Rossi's earlier writings where he talked about the importance of novelty and creating changes in the brain. So a novelty of an experience. I know you specifically have really followed that and kind of looked into this um, cognitive somatic state that we call curiosity. Could you talk a little bit about what we've just talked about and how that evoking that curiosity, how that can lead that moment by moment into different directions?
Yeah, no, I'm getting more excited as I do more work on it. And I've been working very diligently at it over certainly the last probably 10 years, but certainly the last 12 months have revealed a great deal. And what only talks about is novelty, numinosum, what we call novelty, numinosum, brain plasticity, this sense of newness, of surprise, of unusual, but also of wonder and amazement and the gigantic, you know, the sort of the tremendous, this allowing yourself to feel tremendous. Now, usually we only feel tremendous about tremendous things, like it needs to be a massive sunset or a major thing. The trick is, and the key is, to find tremendousness and wonder and novelty in the minutest of things. Now, we were talking privately before about grandchildren, you know, and so, okay, my daughter has just written a book, which is the most magnificent book, and is getting all kinds of huge awards. It's tremendous, it's extraordinary. But my granddaughter will just look at me and go, Papa. And that is, now I could miss it. I could miss it. Now, what I think has been the problem with curiosity is that we have limited it culturally to just the novel, just the new, and we've limited it to new information. So we talk about curiosity now as how does it work? You know, what's it about? Explain this. This is different. This is new. And that's terrific. So it's this curiosity of trying to figure out how it works and what it's all about. And so much so that in the new book I'm working on, I've had to rename it. My agent and prospective people wanting to publish have said, sorry, curiosity's fixed in people's attitude. So I'm going to name it dynamic curiosity. Yeah. So whereas curiosity for information is like, I'm here, I want to go there, it's linear, it's great, it's brilliant, it's fantastic. But we actually have three, it's like a triangle or triad of curiosities, which is a curiosity for information, which is very important. We have a curiosity, so that leads us to investigation and exploration, the seeking one that Panksepp talked to us about. But Panksepp also talked about in the Toward Emotions play as a fundamental emotional drive. So there's curiosity for play in order to enable and extract serendipitous discovery. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, the third one that Panksepp talks about is more to do with, he talks about lust, but love, but passion, engagement. So I think the third aspect of curiosity is the curiosity for meaning. And what meaning brings to us is then a new relationship with the thing that we've learned about. And that creates possibilities. And possibilities is where our resolutions are. Our resolutions aren't necessarily in what we know, although we can use what we know in order to resolve things. Absolutely, we have our resiliences and our past experiences, but our growth is in the possibility. You'll hear all about it later. The possibility space in the reality sphere, and so this triad of curiosities, fascinatingly, stimulate all the biochemicals in the brain. I've examined these. Now, for those who are neuroscientists and neurological in there, the reticular formation is something we've talked about a long time, which gives a burst of information and activity through the thalamus via a set of various nuclei and things in the upper brainstem. Now, I've added a couple of nuclei to the group, which means I need to sort of name it different. I'm calling it the nuncius nuclei, and nuncius meaning messenger. So the messenger nuclei, and these are the nuclei that are stimulated by curiosity, and they affect our serotonin, our dopamine, our acetylcholine, our norepinephrine, our oxytocin. That'll do for now. There's a bunch of other things, and there's a bunch of neuropeptides and things that it triggers. But it triggers them into a framework that allows us to move forward. So therefore, it's stimulating serotonin to reduce our amygdalic withdrawal or concerns. It stimulates dopamine to make us positive in our anticipation and eager to move forward. It stimulates our norepinephrine and noradrenaline in the appropriate way into the prefrontal cortex so that we're focused in our attention, but we also have a sense of clarity that enables us to have not a restricted attention, but a broader attention. And then also it stimulates oxytocin in such a way that enables us to feel like we wish to engage with others, because that's, of course, the best way to create. So when you create curiosity at the beginning of a session, I could just take curiosity and magic and interchange those. When I read your book, I just go, yeah, but dynamic curiosity, which I don't know. I guess if it becomes a popular term, I'll go, yay. But curiosity for just learning is what's getting us a problem. It's keeping us stuck in just information, just what we call the first stage of the cycle, and and not encouraging us to move into meaning and personal development. So how's that? Does that cover a few inches of ground?
Yeah, it does. And it's, for me, it's also, I talk a little bit about these emotional states that we have, that a lot of our linear kind of applications that are taught in therapy tend to go toward the less complex emotional states. And I think we forget sometimes the levels of complexity. You know, we make distinctions, and then we make distinctions about the distinctions, and inferences about the inferences, and descriptions about the descriptions. And then those same kind of thing with our emotional states as we're building on and on. And I think the idea of getting to me, curiosity is a higher level emotional state. It's still a cognitive, tied to it, that just the kind of those basic emotions. I think if we only deal with the basic emotion and don't kind of rise above that, it's hard to kind of, I don't know, feel sometimes like we're missing the boat on how to create more transformative rather than just a reduction in symptomology experience.
And I might just carry on the boat metaphor. It's like we get on the boat and then we think we're sailing.
Yeah.
The thing about sailing is that you move into an unknown experience, even though you're using known elements. You're using a boat, you're using sails, you're doing with. But the wind will come from anywhere. The seas will do all kinds of different things. This dynamic framework. And the great sailors don't sail their boat on the water. What they do is, it's the old Zen. They become engaged with the experience, with the frameworks, and they're changing their sails as the wind changes, because there's this natural interaction. So the novelty becomes an engaged dynamic process. And the magicalness of the session is, one of the most magical things of a magical session is that the therapist has completed the session. They send the client on their way. They sit down to just contemplate what they've done. And the therapist sits there and goes, what happened? Mm-hmm. How did that happen? Why on earth did I say that thing that the client then ran with? Or why, when the client said that thing, did I say that? That was amazing. And there's not a single book in the bookshelf that can replicate or describe what you experienced. That is the essence. And this is what Erickson talked about, that each session is a field experiment. Mm-hmm. As would be our captain boarding his sailboat, and each sail is a unique experience. Although, of course, there are similarities, of course there are commonalities, and of course there are elements that are repeated. Again, going back to the art world in music, back in the Carole King days, Neil Sedaka. They were basically told, go into a room and come out with a hit record. Which very often they did. And what they would do is, if they couldn't be inspired, they would play what was their fundamental form. It was about 4 or 5 chords that they would sort of play, and they would muck around with those. And upward, outward, out of that would emerge this unique melody, this unique experience, which then became a hit record.
Mhm.
And consequently, later on, I don't know if anyone remembers the comedy sketch where there was it was actually an Australian group, I think, who did it, but they played the same 4 chords
Oh, yeah.
and sang all the different songs,
Right.
of which one of them was "Let It Be,"
Yeah.
and they're singing all these songs. So sometimes this framework of the modality and of the manualized treatment is a beautiful thing, but as a framework, as a stepping stone, as a springboard is what I always recommend. And I am always curious, what if I just explored a bit of CBT for the moment? Oh, that's great. At least, oh, that's going nowhere. Oh, I think I'll now, oh, just a minute. They're starting, the wind has shifted and they're shifting about, they're talking somatically. Oh, just a minute. Shift my knowledge and my thinking back to, some Levine and some Ogden and various things. Oh yeah, okay, off we go. But my most favorite sessions, which is exactly what Erickson said, are the ones that have utilized a technique that has never been repeated. And I've got one where I did mobile therapy, where I drew up a mobile on the whiteboard and we added all the bits and pieces to the mobile. He actually said something extraordinary, which changed the whole mobile and reformed his whole life. And he said, "Oh my God, I don't have to live like that anymore. Thank you very much." I thought, what did I do? What was that? Where did that come? What made me think of a mobile? What happened? Let's do it again. It's never been appropriate again. How magical was that?
Pretty darn magical. Do you have any advice for a new therapist that says, I want to start living my life as a magical therapist, a curiosity approach therapist? What's the bit of advice you would give to them in a minute or so?
I think that it's there's a couple of things that are really important. Improvisation is not easy. Improvisation comes out of an enormous development of skill, capacity, knowledge, and experience. So what a new therapist can be confident in is that even if they go by the book, they will do good. They will do good. As long as they're not ignoring their client, still be responsive. But if you're unsure of where to go and you find that you're not really brave enough or comfortable enough to just leap into improvisation, don't worry. Your work will still be good. Have the intention of what if, and don't necessarily make the what if come out of you. Allow the what if to come out of the client. So be paying attention to the client's desire to move into a certain direction and apply your knowledge to their desire to move. So rather than you're improvising and leading the client, if the client sort of starts to say, you're doing CBT, and they start to talk about they're very visual and they like to visually do images, then run with that. You may do it from the framework of the CBT that you're familiar with, but just allow yourself to begin your improvisational experience from the person who plays the instrument better. And there's no one who plays the instrument of themselves better than the client.
That's spot on. Well, as we wrap it up, can you let people know the best way to find you and your work? Because you're pretty busy these days, and
yeah. Well. I mean, I was very good. I was able to get richardhill.com, but it's .com.au. Careful you don't end up in an American real estate office, but I hope you enjoy the property you purchase. But richardhill.com.au, and then there's The Science of Psychotherapy. So the is important. The Science of Psychotherapy.com. You can come in and find all kinds of frameworks there, and that will take you to our academy, where you will also find lots of educational programs that I do, and particularly my work with Ernest Rossi and Mirroring Hands. I've got an online video program there that people engage with. Otherwise, Richard at richardhill.com.au. you can just email me. I'm one of these weird people who loves it and replies.
Uh, well, listen, as always, we could probably talk for a couple hours because this is this is a deep hole that it's so much value when we really take the time, I think, to explore these kind of topics. So much value comes out. And I encourage everyone who's watching this to also check out any of your live trainings that are listed on your site. And the mirroring hands training in particular, I've experienced that firsthand several times when Richard and I present at the same conferences. I try to sit in on his sessions, and it's marvelous stuff. So I always love talking to you. Thanks for talking to me today.
It was my great pleasure, and best wishes, everybody. Ain't life better when it's magical?
Yes. Thanks.